Hey guys, welcome to the Buffalo Brothers podcast preseason edition. We are super excited. We're joined by Ryan Talbot. Not really new. He's been doing this for a long time, but beat reporter for the Buffalo Bills, New York Up. Super excited to have you. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Absolutely,
Yeah, for sure.
absolutely. So, we're just really excited to have you. We've Ryan's kind of an old family friend of ours, and so it worked out great that both of us have passion for the Bills, and we asked him to come on. We're going to talk a little preseason and go into that. We just Ryan, I guess real quick, Ryan, what were some of your first observations from the game? What are some big things that stood out to you?
Well, first and foremost, the performance of the defense. And you don't want to get too high or too low in the preseason because it's very basic schematically. You're not going to see a lot of blitzing. In fact, I don't think Buffalo's first two quarterbacks were blitzed at all, in fact, by the Colts. But you saw what the Bills defense could do on paper with this talent, and you had multiple starters out. Jerry Hughes was rested for the game, Micah Hyde, Lorenzo Alexander. So you had some backups mixed in. They looked great against the run. They applied some pressure on Jacoby Brissett, and they were able to play well in terms of pass defense as well. So here's a unit that finished number 2 overall in defense last year. The only starter that they lost was Kyle Williams to retirement, but they replaced him with Ed Oliver. They add a lot of depth, especially in the secondary. So this is a defense where I think that they, again, are going to be one of those top 3 units in the league, and they got off to a promising start. On offense, there are 1 or 2 throws that Josh Allen would probably like to have back, a few low throws, maybe one that he airmailed a little bit. But if you go back and you look at that drop by Zay Jones in the end zone, because that would have been a touchdown on that play, he would have ended up around 6 for 10. I'm thinking about 80 yards and a touchdown. And in the preseason, that would have been a pretty decent stat line for 1 or 2 drives. The first drive, they got backed up a little bit with penalties. At one point, it was like 1st and 19, and he was able to move the chains early on in that drive with his feet on 3rd down and 8. So you saw a little bit of both worlds, using his arm, using his legs. Offensive line, obviously still not 100% intact without Mitch Morrison there. But overall, I thought that they played pretty well. Cody Ford did miss a block on the first play of the game, but he was pretty solid after that. And I really do like the potential of Cody Ford and Ty Nsekhe on that right side of the line. So I think it was overall a pretty I think if I was a Bills fan, I would be pretty happy with the overall performance of their first game.
Absolutely. I kind of want to go back to something that you said, something that both of us watched. We wanted to see how Ed Oliver did against Quentin Nelson.
Awesome.
What did you see out of Ed in that first preseason game?
Well, it sounds funny because this was a preseason game. They were both in for maybe the first quarter. I'm not sure that Ed Oliver will play a better guard this season than he did in the first preseason game. So, this was his welcome to the NFL moment. He didn't necessarily beat Quentin Nelson on any plays. There's a few plays where he pushed Nelson back, and that's saying something as well, just because of how great Nelson was as a rookie. Yes. All-pro, Pro Bowler. I'm a Notre Dame fan, so I'm very impartial to Quentin Nelson. I know how great he can be in this league, but like I said, there was one play where it was broken down. It wasn't a one-on-one matchup where he kind of whiffed on a sack after. Now I'm blanking on who whiffed on it first. It might have been Trent Murphy, I want to say, maybe whiffed first, and then Oliver came in too and missed as well. But anyways, first performance, I think Ed Oliver looked good. I think he looked solid. I really think his explosiveness off the snap, off the line, is going to be something that benefits the Bills a lot this year. But he's going to be a rookie. There's going to be some mistakes here and there. There's going to be some plays where he's going after the quarterback, and it might be a draw play to the running back and he's in the wrong spot. Whatever the case may be, there's going to be some growing pains. But the fact that the Bills are able to get him at number 9, I think that could end up being the steal of this draft.
Yeah, we're super.
Thank you, Giants.
Yeah, seriously. Thank you, Giants. But, yeah, Jason, you had a couple things you wanted to ask here?
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Robert Foster starting with, I believe he came in with the 3rd team, right?
He played a little bit with the 2s and the 3s. Right now, I'm a big Robert Foster fan, especially when he came on the second half of his season. rookie year, that is. I thought that coming in, he had a chance to still be a big part of this offense, and I still do believe that. I think in the first preseason game, they wanted to have a wide receiver out on the field that could create consistent separation for Matt Barkley, for Tyree Jackson, to give them some kind of potential weapon. Now, he laid out for one ball where at first it was called a completed pass, and then it was reviewed and overturned. When I was up at training camp, I was talking with a few of the other beat reporters, and the one thing that we all agreed on was, if you put Robert Foster and John Brown next to one another in terms of like their skill sets, looking at their natural talent, it's pretty much the same in terms of what their skills are. Yeah. But John Brown is just so much more polished at this point in his career that the only thing that Foster has over him right now is his height. So this is going to be one of those things where, if Brown gets injured, Foster's going to step right into that role. But I think throughout the season, you're going to see 4 wide receiver sets, 5 wide receiver sets at times, and you can put Brown and Foster on the outside, let them run those go routes, let them run those intermediate pass routes that get them 20, 25 yards down the field, and see if they can make a play. But I wouldn't panic yet about Robert Foster. I do think that he is still going to have a pretty big role in this offense.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. No, I think that's good. I don't read too much into it. I think I didn't think of it in those terms of giving Tyree Jackson and Matt Barkley.
I didn't think of it in those terms either.
Yeah, just giving them something to do. So that's actually makes you feel a little bit better. I saw that and it was a little bit having Andre Roberts. I think Andre Roberts ran with the first team, right?
Yep. He took like 11 snaps with them or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, he was out there for a little bit. And the thing is, Roberts, his bread and butter this year is going to be on special teams, and they didn't really even have him do much there. You had Isaiah McKenzie back there who looked pretty good. You had Victor Bolden out there. So, right now, some of those players that are going to be in those starting roles or have bigger roles, maybe they didn't play that in the first preseason game, but I think by the third preseason game, the dress rehearsal, so to speak, that's when you're going to see a true idea of how the lineup's going to look in week 1 against the Jets.
Okay. I think as fans, though, we get so chomping at the bit just to get one preseason game in, and we try to overanalyze week 1 so much.
Analyze everything.
Because we're so excited to to get football back, and then week 1 happens, and then we're like, oh, is this how it's going to be for the whole year? And it's we got to kind of pump the brakes a little bit. But that's good. I wanted to talk to you about Cole Beasley a little bit. I know he got just a few snaps and a few little bit of action, but the one play that he had, it was a little 7 or 8 yard comeback that he was able to get. I saw that and got really excited as a football fan, knowing that Josh potentially has somebody that can get that underneath separation this year. I honestly think that Cole could do wonders for this entire offense. And with Brian Dable kind of coming from that Patriot coaching tree, having that Wes Welker type, having that Julian Edelman type, I think could really, really help Josh's development.
Yeah, you nailed it. He's going to be playing that Julian Edelman, Wes Welker role on this team. Even at training camp, you saw over and over again the Bills coaching staff throw it underneath, praising Josh when he was targeting Cole Beasley. And when you look at like a Pro Football Focus, an analytics site, and some people buy into that more than others, Cole Beasley among slot receivers was the best in the league in terms of creating separation off the line at slot wide receiver. So that's going to be something that he can consistently do against these opposing defenses. And then Josh Allen can drop it down to him for those 5, 6, 7 yard plays. And Beasley can even get some of those yards after the catch. I believe he ended up with 2 catches on Thursday night. Yep. One of the first ones came on that drive where the Bills were backed up a little bit. It was like 1st and 19 after a penalty. And I went back and I thought about Josh Allen's rookie year. And the one thing about Josh Allen during his rookie year is when he was backed up in those down and distance situations, he tried to pick up the whole thing in one play. Yes. He would try to throw it 20, 25 yards downfield. Let's get those yards back. He instead dropped it down, took 7 or 8 yards or 9 yards, had another short gain, whether it was run or pass. And then on third, ended up being 3rd and 8 after that 1st and 19 situation, and he runs the first down. So he realized that he doesn't have to go for it all in one play, and that's a big benefit to what we've seen in the past out of Josh Allen.
Absolutely. Jason, what'd you have next year for him?
Mitch Morse, do you have any information on how he's doing? I know he was in concussion protocol. Is he still in it? Do they plan on playing him at all this preseason? Do you know?
They haven't said much about how much he'll play in the preseason, if at all. He is still in the concussion protocol. He is doing the agility drills. He's doing the stretching. There's I believe it's a 5 or 6 step process to get out of the concussion protocol. He's at least in step 3 to step 4 right now. So
Okay.
That's encouraging. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't play at all in the preseason, because obviously he was brought in to be, for the regular season action. You do want to see him come in, build that rapport, build that chemistry with Josh Allen. But at the same time, you want him healthy for week 1. You don't want him going out there for the dress rehearsal in week 3 or for the preseason finale and getting dinged up again.
Absolutely.
The one thing I will say about the Bills, though, is they do have exceptional depth. If he isn't ready to go, John Feliciano, I think, would be the starting center week 1. Yep. Feliciano has experience playing under Bobby Johnson from their time together with the Raiders. He has the versatility, to play both guard positions and center. So he's going to be one of those valuable positions. You could put Spencer Long there as well, but he really struggled last year with the Jets at the center position. I don't see a guy like Russell Bodine making this roster. He really struggled in the preseason, really struggled last year in his 10 starts. But they do have some backup options in the event that Morse isn't cleared. But I do think that the what we've seen from him in these practices, it's at least pointing in the right direction, that he's getting closer to a return.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. There was a lot of criticism, I think, from some of the fans that I was just reading through on Facebook during free agency. Why are we spending so much money on 7, 8 offensive linemen? And I'm like, this is the reason why we're doing it. Like, this is the reason why we need to spend. I understand we did pay Mitch Morsi a lot of money, but outside of that, we did get some kind of second tier offensive lineman. Actually, I think Quentin Spann, though, is probably more of a top end offensive lineman. But we spent more in quantity than quality, knowing that depth in the entire offensive line last year was such a headache.
Well, absolutely. And you look right now, it's a headache. You have Morse out with the concussion. You have Russell Bodine, who had an oblique strain in that game. Spencer Long at some time during training camp was out. You had Quentin Spain out temporarily, very short. I think it was one day with the foot injury. So the team obviously lost Adrian Waddle for the year to a torn quad. So Connor McDermott, I can keep going, I guess. He's in the concussion protocol too. Right. So you have all these guys, all these bodies that you need for the preseason getting banged up, and you're right. That's why you go out. And Quentin Spain, I don't know. That's one sign. I don't understand how the Bills were able to get him at such a rate. He ended up signing for just a shade over $2 million, if I remember correctly. Here's a guy that had 48 starts with the Titans at guard. So I was surprised there wasn't a bigger market for him. And the Bills obviously liked him quite a bit, because as soon as training camp started, he was the first team left guard. There was no Wyatt Teller pushing for his starting time. There was no other guard that they really flopped around there. It's been Quentin Spain. So that's going to help Deion Dawkins, because Dawkins' first year, he had a veteran like Richie Incognito who could help him out significantly. Spain can do the same thing. That's going to help him. When Morris gets back, that will help the entire line. And then, like I said, the potential of the right side of the line with the veteran Ty Nsekhe and Cody Ford on the inside, that's something that I think they'll have some growing pains early in the year. Nsekhe was better at left tackle than right tackle during his time in Washington. So, the footwork there might not always be as great as it would be on the other side, but there's a lot of potential there, especially in terms of run blocking and creating lanes on that side of the line. So I think Bills fans should be excited about the starting talent that they have on the line, and also some of that depth that can come in and spell the starters when they're tired in games, but also replace them if there is an injury that arises.
Yeah. Speaking of injuries, one of the positions of kind of need this offseason was tight end. When we bring in Croft, and then we bring in, we got Lee Smith, who's actually healthy right now. But Dawson Knox was drafted fairly high, mid-round pick, and then Sweeney was a late-round pick. I saw Sweeney got the start, obviously, probably because injury issues and all that things. What have you seen from Sweeney, and is he a lock to make this roster now with all of these injuries, or is how do you see the tight end depth chart fleshing itself out?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I don't know how many tight ends the Bills plan on carrying. they have some tough decisions to make, because I think obviously they're going to carry 2 quarterbacks because they're going to want to have that roster, that third quarterback roster spot, used somewhere else on this roster, whether it's at running back, wide receiver, tight end, offensive line, defensive ends, another area where they could keep an extra player. But right now, if I were to guess, Tyler Kroft, he might still start the year on the PUP list. He might not be ready to go. He's out of that boot now. But when he is healthy, when he does get back up to speed, you'll see him working with the starters. Dawson Knox is a little bit further behind in the hamstring rehab than Jason Kroom, but I think that he'll play a big role in this offense. He's obviously a lock, 3rd-round pick. He was my number 4 tight end in this draft class.
Wow.
Behind Hawkinson, Fant, and Irv Smith Jr. So I really did like Dawson Knox from a skill set from what he brought to the table. He wasn't really productive at Ole Miss, but from what you see at the new version of a tight end in the NFL, he's what you want.
Yeah.
Lee Smith is that traditional blocker. That's all he's going to be. Obviously in the red zone, he might roll out on a few plays and maybe catch a few touchdowns, but you're not going to see him running out for passes a lot because he is a great blocker. He's going to add a lot to the run game from that perspective. And then it comes down to, do they carry a 4th tight end? And if they do, the race is obviously between Tommy Sweeney and Jason Kroom. Kroom is getting closer to his coming back. He had some moments last year, but I think he's pretty far behind Tommy Sweeney right now. Sweeney is a versatile tight end. A lot of people thought he was more of just a blocking tight end. He can catch the ball. He has very good hands. I think if he wasn't held up on that first play of the game in the preseason, he would have hauled in that Josh Allen ball.
Yeah.
The safety on that play was called for illegal use of the hand, so he kind of jammed him after the 5 yards, and that slowed him down a little bit. So I think Sweeney does make the team. I'm not ready to call him a lock yet, just because the Bills might have to keep an extra offensive lineman, defensive end, because of injuries or whatever the case may be. But I think his chances are really good. And remember the name Nate Becker, too. I think Becker has a really good chance to make the practice squad for the Bills. Okay. Here's a guy that they grabbed after the draft, unheralded. A lot of people probably thought, this is just a body, a guy that's going to end up being released. He's going to end up being released. He's not making this 53-man roster, but I think he has a real good chance to make the practice squad based on how well he played at training camp.
Awesome. Yeah, Jay, go ahead.
Oh no, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah. So, I guess give me 1 or 2 surprise cuts, and maybe give me 1 or 2 surprise making the team.
Oh, that's surprise cuts. I'm gonna have to think about that one.
Surprise cuts.
Maybe. And I came away very impressed with him, and I think he helped his standing quite a bit. Isaiah McKenzie, that might be a surprise cut to some people, but the Bills have 5 guys already in front. When you look at John Brown, Cole Beasley, Robert Foster, Zay Jones, and Andre Roberts. There's your 5 right there. Yeah. Ray McLeod had a really good camp. I think Ray McLeod and Isaiah McKenzie are fighting for that spot. Cam Phillips, I think, is still in that race too. I would still say that Ray McLeod is in the lead, but I think McKenzie closed the gap quite a bit, because not only did he look good and lead the team with 62 yards receiving on 2 catches, he also looked good as a return man, and that's originally why they signed him last year. He had some fumble issues with the Broncos. That's why the Broncos were ended up getting rid of him. But he can end up being a kick returner or a punt returner if something happens to Andre Roberts. So he has that special team ability too. After the first preseason game, I don't know if he qualifies for a surprise cut. I think TJ Yeldon is as good as out the door. 2 carries, 8 yards,
that
1
fumble.
I think when you look at all the running backs, you could argue that he'd be towards the bottom, if not at the bottom now. Marcus Murphy looked good at 5.5 yards per carry. I don't think he makes the team. Christian Wade, 1 carry, 65 yards, touchdown. He's a guy that I think they're going to stash on the practice squad, just because there's still a lot of learning that he has to do in terms of the NFL game. He's 28 years old, so he's not a young guy by any means in NFL terms. But he needs more experience. I don't think he's ready yet. And if he does get placed on the practice squad, the Bills cannot promote him at any point during the regular season, because he's kind of like the exception to the rule. He'd be the 11th member of the practice squad. Yeah. But I think he'd get it'd be more valuable for him to be on the practice squad for another year. But I think Sonoris Perry will end up being the number 4 running back if they carry a 4th running back, because he's working with the first team on special teams as a gunner. He made his name for himself last year in Miami as the gunner. He led their team in special teams tackles. And he showed a pretty good pretty good ability out of the backfield with the ball in his hands and as a receiver at training camp. So I think he brings a little bit more to the table than some expect in that regard too. So Yeldon's another guy that I expect to be out the door. Surprise players to make the roster. Dean Marlowe maybe would be a surprise because they already are pretty deep at safety. You have Poyer, you have Micah Hyde. Saran Neal is more of a defensive back in my eyes now because he's playing the big nickel. So I want to mention his name because I think he makes this roster, but he's not a traditional safety anymore. Mm-hmm. But they signed Kurt Coleman. He already was inserted with this second team defense. He knows the ins and outs of this defense. He's a guy that this coaching staff trusts, so I think he makes it. So that last spot is going to come down to Dean Marlowe or Jaquan Johnson, a draft pick, a 6th-round draft pick.
Right.
Johnson led the Bills in tackles in the first preseason game. Marlowe had an interception. Marlowe's a guy that they trust, but he always seems to kind of get pushed to the back burner a little bit, gets released, was on their practice squad, gets promoted. He's a guy that if he is on this 53-man roster, they can trust him to play a few snaps here and there, trust him on special teams especially. But he always just seems to be the odd man out. But I could see him being a surprise addition to this roster. And then if I had to pick one more player that would be a surprise addition, maybe a Jaron Jones, a guy that they just signed this week, because I still think they're looking for an answer at swing tackle after they lost Adrian Waddle. Connor McDermott, he's been very up and down with his play. He's in the concussion protocol now. Yeah. They just signed Ryan Bates out of Penn State, or I'm sorry, they traded for Ryan Bates, I should say, yesterday in a trade with the Eagles for Eli Harold. So he has a chance for that role too. But they do need someone to occupy that role. So maybe someone that was just signed or traded for in this week makes the 53-man roster.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be I think the good part about this year is there's a lot more tough decisions because we do have a lot more depth this year. It seems like at all positions. It was a little bit more clear cut in the last couple of years, like here are your starters, and then the drop off seemed to be so heavy that it was, and any injuries that we had, it was hard. Now, guys like Levi Wallace stepped up last year, which was huge, and I'm super excited to see him. Are you seeing Levi or Kevin Johnson taking down that number 2 corner spot?
Right now, I'm sticking with Levi Wallace. I think Kevin Johnson can play significant reps per week. He can come in and play, and by significant reps, mind you, a defense might only be on the field 50 plays a game, depending on what it is. But he could end up playing
with our defense.
He can end up playing 15 snaps per game and spelling some of these guys, giving them a rest. The thing with Johnson is I think they really want to see, can he stay healthy throughout this entire preseason, because injuries have been something that have followed him throughout his career. But Wallace, in those last 7 games, he played extremely well, and he's played well in training camp, and I think that he hasn't done anything to lose the job.
Sure. Yeah, I really like Levi. Pro Football Focus loves Levi.
Yeah, it is.
So, no, that's good. Just a couple more questions for you just on some of these battles. In the Battle of the Corys, punter battle, who do you got? I know there was a couple, both of them struggled, and both of them had a couple moments, nice moments the other night. What are you seeing from the punters?
Yeah, it's been a little bit inconsistent in the Corey versus Corey battle. I'm not saying that the Bills will go elsewhere and sign another punter, but I wouldn't be shocked after the roster cutdown day if they at least look to see what's out there. Kind of like how they added Corey Baroquez there last year. But right now, I still think it's a coin flip. I don't think either player has done enough to stand out to show that they should be the guy. So right now, I can't say that either of them is the favorite for the job.
Absolutely. And just a couple observations that I had that, last year, obviously, with the quarterback carousel when Josh got hurt, Derek Anderson and Nathan Peterman and Matt Barkley. It seems like Matt Barkley's really settled into that backup quarterback spot, and I really, really think that he is he's a solid depth signing for us as far as if Josh got hurt. The interesting thing about Matt, though, is he's kind of the anti-Josh Allen. Like he's a little bit more cerebral. He is a little bit his arm isn't as strong. He makes his reads and all of those things. But I really think that it was a blessing in disguise getting to see Matt play against the Jets last year, knowing that he's got something left in the tank, and going into this season, I think as a Bills fan, I'm pretty comfortable with Matt as the number 2 quarterback. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with that. Barkley had signed a 2-year deal last year with the Cincinnati Bengals and was competing for their backup job when he went down with an injury and ended up getting waived and things like that. And he actually, as soon as he was healthy, that's when the Bills called him. I think he would have been signed pretty quickly before that if he would have been healthy, if he would have been able to pass a physical. So it was kind of like the timing of it worked out really well for Buffalo. And you're right. He is the anti-Josh Allen in terms of the skill set. He probably has a below average arm in the NFL, but he does take those chances. He does find a way to get the ball to his receivers. He's very savvy, very smart. You saw it in the preseason on his touchdown pass to Cam Phillips.
Yep.
He waited for Phillips to get open in the back of the end zone. He led him to the one end of the end zone, the corner, and there was no competition. It was just a matter of Phillips coming down with the ball and getting his feet in. You saw it in the Jets game. After his long that first touchdown drive that LaShawn McCoy ended with a touchdown run. I want to say it was after that. Maybe it was the start of the second half. I can't remember exactly where it was. There was one throw that he made where it really should have been intercepted, and it went right off the hands of one of the players in the secondary for the Jets. But right after that, he was still attacking them, going after them. So he has that short-term memory where he's not going to be afraid to make those same types of throws. He squeezed one touchdown pass into Zay Jones in that game in a tight window. I want to say between 3 defenders, if I remember correctly, and it got in there. So Josh Allen can learn from him. He can say, you have the arm strength to really fit these balls into those windows, but there's nothing wrong with throwing with anticipation.
Yes.
Trusting your receivers, and then having more knowledge of the overall playbook, which is something that Barkley really helped Allen with last year, that he'll help him with this year. And then obviously you have Ken Dorsey now in the quarterback room as the quarterback's coach, someone who actually played quarterback. That's going to help Allen out a lot as well. So Barkley's a great backup to have, and now you have that added benefit of having a quarterback coach who played in the NFL as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Ken Dorsey is going to be huge. Real quick, Devin Singletary. Really, really liked what I saw from him. He kind of reminded me of no, I'm not going to make this direct comparison, but he kind of looks like LaShawn McCoy a little bit running out there. He's a lot of
shady when he was at the Eagles.
Good vision. But he's got a little bit of power to him. I noticed he was pushing the pile a little bit, but the dude's not very big.
No, but you're right. He has great vision. He's hard to bring down, and that's actually not a bad comparison because during the draft, there was a few draft analysts. Daniel Jeremiah compared him to LaShawn McCoy, and Emory Hunt. He's a really good guy for the draft time of year, all year, but he's a really good draft guy. He compared him to Frank Gore. So, and he's kind of a mix of the two because he doesn't have McCoy's breakaway speed necessarily. So he might not rip off a 70-yard run, but he has the vision to turn nothing into something. So Absolutely. A run that should go for 1 yard might end up going for 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And one area that really impressed me at training camp was his ability as a receiver. He wasn't really utilized as a receiver much during his college career. I think he had 26 receptions 1 year, and then it really went down from year after year after that. He wasn't utilized as a receiver, but he looked great as a wide receiver, good hands, and he was very smooth in terms of catching the ball and then getting upfield. So I think that he could play a big role as a receiver as well this year, which is something maybe people didn't anticipate when they drafted him in the 3rd round.
Yeah, absolutely. Jason, do you have anything?
Yeah. Back to the wide receivers. You mentioned Isaiah McKenzie, Cam Phillips. What about David Sills or Duke Williams? Are they doing anything significant in camp or? No. Sills, both of them look very slow on the field first and foremost, and that's to be expected. They were brought in for their size more than anything else. Yep.
I think a lot of West Virginia's scheme helped Sills get open in the college game. There are big gaps in the defense with that offense that they would run, but Sills, I don't see any path for him to this 53-man roster. Maybe he shows enough to make the practice squad. Duke Williams, unfortunately, kind of the same thing. He had some moments at training camp in the red zone where he hauled in some touchdown passes, but it's the lack of separation. If he can use his physicality over these last 3 preseason games, maybe he can make a case to be an available addition. But I think the Bills, are finally starting to get away from that idea that Allen needs a big wide receiver with a wide radius to make it work, because they saw that it did not work with Kelvin Benjamin in his year and a half here with the team, and it worked better. Allen looked a lot better in the second half of the year throwing to Zay Jones, who sometimes struggles with separation himself, Robert Foster, who was getting open on his own, Isaiah McKenzie underneath. So now you add a Cole Beasley who can get open underneath, a John Brown, who defenses are going to play off of him a lot because they know of his speed. He can break off a route. He did it a lot at camp where he was getting a lot of respect from the secondary at times. Yep. He would just break off that deep route, stop, turn, and pick up 15, 20 yards instead. And that's something where he's smart enough to do that, and Allen can get that ball to him in a split second with his arm strength, and then let him, with that separation, see what he can do after the catch. So there's a lot of reasons to be excited about this wide receiver staff. It's going to be hard, though, for one of those bigger wide receivers to make this team.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then on the other side of the ball, our fifth-round draft pick, Voshon Joseph, he had a really nice tackle in that game. Have you seen anything special out of him in camp other than
at camp he was running with the third-team defense. He wasn't really ever promoted up to the second team. Maurice Alexander was kind of playing with the second team, and that's who he's going to have to beat out for that roster spot, in my opinion. Yep. I think he did himself quite a few favors on Thursday night against the Colts, because there was one play on defense where he just drilled the back and he fell backwards. And then on special teams on a kick return, he ran down the field and he just popped the guy and knocked the guy right over. And that's what you're going to need out of him in year one, because he's not going to see a lot of snaps on defense if he makes this roster. He's going to make this roster for his special teams play. And if he can keep getting down the field and making those hits, making those tackles, he's going to tell the coaching staff, listen, I'm well worth keeping and molding, because his film was very inconsistent. There were times where he looked like a first-round prospect. There were times that he looked like a guy that shouldn't get drafted at all. And that's how extreme it was. But Sean McDermott, if there's one position I trust him working with, it's the linebacker position.
Oh, for sure.
From his time at Carolina, from even with the Eagles, he did some good things with the linebacker position. Tremaine Edmonds, he was a first-round pick. He was expected to be good, but you saw his growth throughout his rookie year. By the end of the year, he looked great. He wasn't biting on the play fakes anymore. He was in position. He was calling things out that he saw. He's really taken a bigger role this year, and I think he's going to be a monster on this defense. Matt Milano, this is his third year now. He was playing at an all-pro, Pro Bowl level last year when he went down with that injury. So, there's two guys that they've drafted in his tenure that have both played big parts, that are both going to be starting. Yeah. So I think 1 year with Voshon Joseph playing more special teams than anything else, it's going to help him grow his game. So then by 2020, he could play a much bigger role in terms of the linebacker position.
Well, yeah, and you can't imagine we have Lorenzo Alexander for much longer. So to get somebody in there to fill that role going forward is going huge. To be huge. And I really, really love, being a Bills fan my whole life, we have seen some really inept front offices, and we've seen some really inept coaching. I really like what Beane and McDermott are doing. There's a few examples of this is just they have their principles and they know what they want, but they're not afraid to make adjustments. And a couple examples of that are like how we go get receivers. In Carolina, they all wanted those big body Devin Funchess, Kelvin Benjamin receivers, and then they came into Buffalo and they thought that that's what they wanted for Josh. And a lot of places would dig their heels in the ground saying this is the kind of offense that we're going to put in. And then they realize, hey, Josh is actually better suited for more of these speed guys. So let's go out and let's go get those guys. And just to see that there seems to be a lot less egos in the room this time around than there has been, especially during the Rex Ryan era, and even the Doug Marrone era. It seems like it's whatever we have to do, whatever adjustments we have to make, we'll make it happen. Yes, we have a formula. Yes, we have a system that we want to implement, but we're not afraid to deviate from that if we need to. The receivers are one aspect of that. And then just the combination of youth and veteran leadership, it just seems like they've struck this really good balance, having guys like, Kyle Williams coming back for that last season, signing a guy like Frank Gore, having Lorenzo Alexander, but also signing those guys that are good veteran leaders with the understanding of, hey, we want you to come in. Yes, you're going to play, and yes, you're going to contribute, but you're really here to develop these guys, and
Guys, yep.
off the field too. Off the field, if you look at, Brian Dable is if he can turn this team around, is going to be a hot commodity for a head coaching job here in the next couple of years. But to have a guy like Ken Dorsey step up as a quarterbacks coach, he could slide right into an offensive coordinator's position if he needed to in 2020 or 2021.
Yeah, they've done a good job across the board. Bobby Johnson, offensive line coach, really loved watching him when I went up to camp. A lot of energy, really on the players, really good relationship. They bring in John Butler for the secondary. He had time with the Texans. He is another good coach. Ken Dorsey, as you mentioned. And then almost every room in terms of the positions, there's a veteran. Quarterback, Matt Barkley. Running back, McCoy and Gore. And if you want to throw DeMarco in there at fullback, you throw DeMarco in there. Wide receiver, John Brown, Cole Beasley. Tight ends, the one area where there's not necessarily a veteran presence. Croft has been in the league for a few years, but they were going after Benjamin Watson at one point this offseason, so they even looked for that position. Offensive line, you have a Mitch Morse, you have a Ty Inseki, who Inseki's story is amazing. He was playing arena ball for many years and really didn't get his first shot in the NFL until his late 20s and made the most of it. But he has that presence. Lorenzo Alexander at linebacker, cornerback. Trey White isn't necessarily a veteran, quote unquote, but he's been a day one starter his entire career, so he has a lot of knowledge there. Hayden Poyer at safety, and even Hauschka on special teams. So across the board, they have that veteran presence, and now they have that influx of young talent. So it is a really good mix, like you said.
Awesome.
Hey, I just have one more question, Ryan.
All right.
What is it like having a job that most Buffalo Bills fans dream of?
Growing up in Western New York, getting to cover the team that I watched every single week as a kid, as a teenager, it's a pretty cool experience. It's pretty surreal. I was telling my dad actually recently, he was asking, how was it when you were on up to training camp? And I'm like, I was telling all the media, and Buffalo media is the best. I'm telling you, you would think it'd be like a cutthroat industry because there's all these different competitors, but it's not. Shout out to Tim Graham. When I first started, Tim Graham had me call him, ask him things. He was one of the best writers in the world, not just Buffalo, in the world. And he's taken this time for this guy who was just getting started. I've been very blessed to work with two great beat reporters, Matthew Fairborn, who's also at The Athletic now, Matt Perino, who's doing a great job, came over from the UFC and has made this transition flawlessly. Awesome. Joe B has been a great guy in my career who I can talk to. Sal Capaccio, another guy who has always taken the time to talk. So great media presence. But I was telling him, I'm talking with some of the media guys, and Frank Gore just kind of walks by and he accidentally kind of bumps by me. I'm thinking, that's kind of cool. I could think as a kid, how cool would that be?
Right.
But it's really it's a fun job. It's a blessing to be able to cover a professional NFL team. I love it. I love everything about it. The times that I've been lucky enough to break news, whether it's signings, releases, things like that, that gives you an adrenaline rush no matter how many times you do it. So it is a really cool job. I'll be the first to admit that.
That's awesome.
That's awesome, man. And we honestly, like, the reason we put this together, we just love the Bills and we wanted to do this and have some fun and put it together and we've been picking up a little bit of momentum online and things have been going well and stuff, and we're just sitting there going like, where could this go? This could be something really big in a couple of years. Who knows? But for now we just want to share our love with the Bills, with the world, and put together videos and podcasts and stuff. And so, hey, Ryan, we really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, dude, awesome. We really, really appreciate it. So I actually reached out to Matt Perino and hoping to have him on the next couple weeks too. He was really gracious and was super excited to come and talk with us. So, hey, man, Ryan, we appreciate it. Maybe we'll have you on a couple more times during the season. We would love to have you. So.
I'd love that too. And yeah, guys, keep plugging away. This was great. You obviously know your stuff. And like you said, you never know where this will go. I never knew when I first started where my career would go. And you just don't. And you're going to pick up that following. The Bills fan base is very dedicated. They're always looking for new different outlets. I think the fact that you guys get this stuff up on YouTube is very smart. I think that's one market that maybe isn't targeted enough, and you guys are there. I think that can be big for you guys as well. So keep working at it. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me on.
Hey, thanks, Ryan. We appreciate it. Hey, and Bills fans, thanks for listening. We're the Buffalo Brothers. Stay tuned. We got a couple videos coming out this week, as well as, we're going to release this podcast tonight. But yeah, we're just super excited for the season, and we can't wait for week 2. Who do we got preseason week 2? Is it the Panthers?
The Lions, right?
Lions.
No, the Lions are 3. Panthers?
You had the Panthers because they're going to be heading to Carolina for the joint practices here coming up, and then the game shortly thereafter.
Perfect. Well, hey guys, we appreciate Ryan. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch y'all later. Go Bills.
Yep, go Bills.
Bye.
Thanks, Ryan.
You got it.